because it's not practical to manage every single payroll and every single payment. You want to be managing by exception. They reckon that they've saved for their payroll manager 10 days saved per month. I mean, goodness me, that's a third of a month for that individual. It's enormous. You use pay on demand to effectively eliminate the payroll cycle, because people can take the pay whenever they want, and then what used to be called paydays, now we don't call it that, but effective is reconciliation. People are taking their pay and pay as they want. We don't want our customers and payroll teams wasting hours of time navigating tax rules, company policies, and so on. It needs to be instantly searchable based on a human query.
Hello and welcome back to the Payroll Podcast. I'm your host. My name is Nick Day. I'm the CEO at JGA Recruitment Group, and we are specialist global payroll recruiters. If you are new to the show, well, you're in the right place if you work in payroll, because this is the show where we explore the big ideas, the bold innovations, and today in particular, the emerging technologies that are really shaping the future of global payroll. If you're regular to the show, thank you and welcome back. But if you're new, please do remember to click subscribe or follow on whatever your favorite podcast platform is. But most importantly, please share this episode and this show with all of your payroll colleagues and friends. It's my intention, my aim, my goal to really raise the profile of global payroll. And to do that, I need your help. It means getting this show into more ears, more eyes, as quickly and as broadly as possible. So if you can help me with that ambition, that would be fantastic. Now, today, if you're joining us, we are diving into what I would call high-performance payroll. What does that mean? Well, today, joining me is someone who's right at the forefront of global payroll transformation, and that's Nick Webb, Chief Marketing Officer at CloudPay. Now, Nick and his team at CloudPay are currently helping to redefine how enterprise organizations approach global payroll. They're blending best-in-class automation, certified APIs, and that buzzword we hear all the time, artificial intelligence or AI, to create payroll systems that don't just function, they perform. And we're going to find out what that really means in the world of payroll during the course of today's conversation. But let's all be honest, payroll today needs to do a lot more than just run accurately and on time. And that's why I'm really excited to have Nick on the show today, because he'll see this from a customer and marketing perspective. So without further ado, let's dive into the conversation and welcome Nick Webb to the Payroll Podcast. How are you feeling, Nick?
Very good. Thank you, Nick. And thanks for the invite. Much appreciated.
Super excited to have you on the show. Super excited to have a slightly different perspective, perhaps, than some of my previous guests, coming from that customer, that marketing view that you have. But before we jump into all of that, let me ask you my first question, something I ask all of my guests, which is this: what does the word payroll mean to you?
So I think you've already mentioned it in your intro, but saying it's not enough. But I think we need to reinforce the views that it is paying people the right amount on time, because ultimately that's what people expect from us in the payroll industry. I think beyond that, we also need to think that it's to support organizations in what they're trying to achieve. If they're expanding into different geographies, for example, if they're withdrawing from different geographies, if they're having to bring on different types of workers. We know that the world of work is changing, and we need to be the enablers for that to happen. So that's how I think about it. Behind the scenes, of course, in what is a simple description, as we all know, as people who work in the industry, stands a whole lot of complexity, which is, I think, where the technology comes in that we're going to talk about.
Yeah, fantastic. We think of technology as an enabler typically, but at the moment, there's a lot of enabling tech being talked about in the world of AI. It's promising a lot, particularly in the world of payroll. But let's be honest, for many in payroll, and you get this from the customer perspective, it can sometimes feel very overwhelming. So I want to ground the conversation a little bit if we can. If AI in payroll sounds complex, where should payroll professionals begin to start making sense of it all?
So I think that we should think about AI as being sort of technology designed to mimic human thought, to solve complex tasks, which takes it way above some of the technologies that we've had in the past. I think that in a way we've all been using, maybe unknowingly, or maybe it wasn't labelled as such, we've been using AI for some time, right? Whether it be in the payroll industry or whether it be, predictive text on our phone. So it's not perhaps as new as we think it is, and certainly in payroll, many companies have been using AI or earlier versions, iterations of it for AI. Broadly speaking, the way that we're thinking about AI, and we're really clear on how we're deploying technology, is that it's there to support human behaviours and human decision makings. It certainly isn't to replace it, which is what everybody appears to be fearful of. It's to enable humans to focus on the right things and have AI and indeed other technologies focus on the perhaps more mundane things, which isn't valuable for humans to be performing.
Sure. I think we've said it a lot on this show. It's to augment what payroll people do, not to replace. But of course, we get headlines from the BBC, headlines from Forbes, all saying these roles are going to disappear. But actually, when you put a timeline against it, we're not looking imminently anyway. There's a lot of evolutions that happen in the world of technology and AI. What we do know is a lot of payroll professionals' time gets eaten up by manual tasks. That could be inputting data, checking figures, rechecking figures. It's packed with manual data entry and endless checks. So can we really trust AI to handle those manual tasks? And how are you looking at that from a platform provider's perspective? What are the elements you're hoping to support or augment those payroll professionals with some of those activities?
No, we haven't seen weather forecasters and airport planners losing their jobs because of this. No. It's enabled them to do their jobs better. And I think that's how we should be thinking about it. But there are a number of applications of AI in payroll that I'm sure others are looking at. The first one is like document classification, validations, forecasting, predictive analytics, employee support through conversational AI. I think that we see AI as sitting on top of a couple of layers. We talk about like the 3 A's of technology in payroll. We talk about automation, which is reasonably well known, although still continuing to make inroads into everybody's technology stacks. APIs, which no doubt we're going to come to as well. And then we see AI as, if you like, sitting on top of those two other related technologies and just take us to the next level. I was talking to somebody the other day, and they were saying, like, if automation is a cake shop making lots of cakes quickly, and hopefully without too many mistakes, although you need to manage by exception, and that APIs is making sure all those pieces are joined up, then AI is writing a cookbook. And I think that's sort of how we think about it. And I think that with the right controls in place to make sure the cookbook doesn't do things we don't want it to do and combine unusual ingredients, then that's how we're thinking about it.
I heard a quote last week, and excuse me because I can't remember the AI individual that gave it, but it resonated with me as something to think about. And the quote was something along the lines of, the idea of not having a backup copy of yourself in the next 5 years will eventually, will feel absurd. The idea that that's something we're all going to have within 5 years, we're going to have a backup copy of ourselves, and the idea of not having it is going to be like feeling like we don't have a phone at the moment. I think the word is absurd. With that perspective, and actually from a marketing lens, how far can AI really go in managing real-world payroll challenges? I know you mentioned we've been actually using AI for a long time with simple automations. We're familiar with AI, as you mentioned, opening our phones with biometrics and facial recognitions. But is there, and you get a slightly different view of this on the inside layer of being a part of a major global vendor. So how far can it go to solving some of those real-world challenges?
Well, it's interesting, as a quick aside, before I answer sort of how we're looking at this from a payroll perspective, is that we in marketing are using AI, ChatGPT and other applications to help us do marketing better. It could be writing a simple script. It could be doing designs for us. We're starting to use it to analyze some of our digital marketing data, which is notoriously complex and that is multidimensional. So it's, of course, not just in payroll. It's permeating all parts of a business, including marketing. But probably the key ones for us are like having an AI assistant in knowledge base. So probably in common with a lot of other organizations, we have our customers. They ask us questions, and we have a deep well of knowledge in payroll, deep level of expertise, and that's what they expect from us. And I think by using AI and chatbots to get a comprehensive view of how the payroll operates and where to answer queries and so on, we're seeing AI will very soon play a major role in that. For the simple reason that there's so much information, and that a lot of the information is interrelated, and that you need like a machine-powered ability for customers to access that information. So we don't want our customers and payroll teams wasting hours of time navigating tax rules, company policies, and so on. It needs to be instantly searchable based on like a human query. So we see that as a major part of it, because as much as the technology is important, the automations, the APIs, the integrations that we all talk about, we also see that customers want to have access to expertise.
Yeah.
And that won't always be access to a person. Often it is now for our customers, but people expect access to that expertise. And AI, as an assistant in a knowledge base, can definitely help with that.
I mean, there's been a lot of adaptation, even from, taking out the world of payroll. Now there's a lot more familiarity with working with things like chatbots. Initially, we kind of rejected it. We didn't know if we liked it. But actually now, if I'm booking something through an airline or something along those lines, I don't actually always want to speak to a person. For the simple inquiries, for the simple things I can do myself, actually, I sometimes want a quick response. And I think we've learned to embrace it and use it when we need it. But as you say, when you need that specialist level of expertise, that's when you want that kind of human element to kind of walk you through. And we know that pay slips are incredibly important to people's livelihoods. It impacts financial wealth and things like that. So it's understandable why you need that human element.
Yeah. So the other thing is exception reporting. Now, we all know that one of the characteristics of payroll, and as a quick aside, one of the things that much of my time as a marketing professional has been spent in technology industry, so telecommunications and IT and so on. And I am a relative newcomer to this industry. I started 3 years ago. One of the things that struck me was that compared to some other industries that I've worked in, that payroll hadn't yet picked up some of the technologies that were commonplace elsewhere. And I began to wonder why, and then I realized that the challenge in payroll and the complexity of the data is, in my mind, pretty unique. And so that will tell you that when the technology evolves and when we as payroll professionals evolve enough to deploy that technology, it will make a major difference. But it has been, I think, more challenging for payroll professionals to identify how this technology can help than it might have been if you worked in telecoms or IT, where there is complex data, but that's where big data came from. But it's nowhere near as complex and as variable and as changeable as the data we in payroll have to deal with. And that's where I think AI comes in.
You give me a question that springs to mind then, because you've worked in other sectors. Let me ask you this. You mentioned that maybe the underinvestment in tech is because of the complexity, and that could absolutely be the reason. It's certainly there. But do you think there's also an element, having seen different sectors, that the fact that it doesn't have all the same tools or isn't perhaps as far ahead as you may have thought it would be, is because it's underinvested as a back office function, because it doesn't get the visibility it deserves, because, I don't know, maybe C-suites don't necessarily give the value to payroll that it should get. It's one of the reasons we're trying to raise the profile to, if we do that, we can start to get the investment. Is it the complexity or is it the investment? Is it a bit of both?
That's a really interesting point, because one of the things that we did when I worked in telecoms, and we were working on what was then our complexity, which was what was called unified communications, the ability to use your phone, your laptop, and your mobile interchangeably and for video like we are now, is that the way that we persuaded our customers, C-suite, and our own C-suite for that matter, to invest in it was by saying, you can use this. Whereas payroll, it doesn't have the same prominence. So, they expect to get paid every month. And this is one of the challenges, I know that you're a huge sort of flag bearer for the industry, which is absolutely fantastic. I love it. But is that we in payroll don't get the right level of prominence. And it probably is down to something of which you speak, is that, like, why would we invest in payroll? It seems to work fine. Little knowing that behind the scenes, there was an army of people using, Excel and various other XML integrations and so on, to get a single outcome, which is that somebody gets paid the right amount on time. So there's something to be said for that.
I think also people forget it's one of the only function. Well, I think it is the only function probably that touches every employee, every pay cycle, whether that's every single month, every single week, or bi-weekly, depending on your frequency. Now, that's pretty phenomenal. Every employee in your business gets touched by this department, and yet it's still underfunded, in my opinion. Well, something I want to jump into from a marketing lens then, because so we've talked a little bit about AI. We're going to go into a little bit more deeper level with that in just a moment. But we also know that AI can really help bring analytics together. It can help us spot trends. And I'd imagine part of your role as marketing is to identify those trends, those cost savings, the time saved, the cost saved, the I guess the sellable features of a solution that need to be made public so people can go, hey, if I look at this platform, this is the impact it could have on your payroll department. What are some of the interesting stats that you've discovered from from looking into AI and looking at some of those trends that actually bring real value to global payroll professionals that maybe they don't even use a platform at the moment. Maybe they're still on manual. They haven't seen some of these stats come to life. It'd be really good to be, or really interested to find out some of those things that you're bringing to the fore from a marketing lens, a marketing perspective.
Yeah, it's a really good question, because our prospects and our customers are asking for that too, because they're, as you've sort of just touched on, they're having to make the case internally for investment in a payroll platform or in a payroll service of the type that we provide. And again, it's interesting that it's a challenge actually to identify these things, because of the underinvestment. We don't have like a well-trained muscle in doing this. But for example, I think that if I take a customer that we work with currently, are working with, a company called DataSite. They had manual payments being made, GL files being extracted and manually manipulated. Employees' pay slips were like my disconnected systems. In fact, some of the employees were getting their pay slips by post.
Wow. Okay.
Which shows just how much the underinvestment you've talked about. And the annual salary reviews were done country by country calculations. So all of this, as you might imagine, was causing a lot of time, pain, inaccuracy, and so on. And so when we started working with them, we realized straight away that we could deploy what we call the 3As, automation, APIs, and AI, to help them. The answer for them lay in deploying the technology. And as a result, they have, as you might expect, they've now got fully automated payments, seamless GL files, literally no manual manipulation required. And again, we've been saying to them, so what difference has it made? What difference has it made is that this unified, seamless payroll and payment system, end-to-end automation, in theory, and in fact in practice, the inputs can go in at one end and they go all the way through, managed only by exception, because it's not practical to manage every single payroll and every single payment. You want to be managing by exception. They reckon that they've saved for their payroll manager for EMEA and APAC, for example, 10 days saved per month. I mean, goodness me, that's like a third of a month for that individual. It's enormous. Plus a couple of STs in addition to that, across all of their teams. So these things can make a difference, and the difference is tangible in terms of time saved doing the manual manipulation. But the intangibles, these sort of imponderables, if you like, is the amount of that people didn't have to work late in the evening to correct mistakes that had been made because of manual processes. They didn't have to call up their manager or call up an employee and say, sorry, your payments are going to be late because of this. They didn't have to go through the making, double checking and eyeballing as they copy and paste from one spreadsheet to another that mistakes haven't been made. So we need to do a better job as marketing people trying to quantify and articulate the benefits that these types of technologies are able to bring. But we're going some way down the track, but it's significant.
Attention payroll leaders. If you're listening to this, you already know that payroll has never been more complex. Compliance risks are rising, skilled talent is scarce, and getting it wrong can cost your business way more than just money. It can cost you trust, retention, and of course, brand reputation. I'm Nick Day, host of this show and also CEO of JGA Recruitment Group, specialist global payroll recruiters. Here at JGA, we're so passionate about payroll, we've even turned it into music. Don't believe us? Head to your favorite audio platform and search for Payroll Powers the World, and you can quite literally join us in song about how we believe payroll deserves its moment in the boardroom to shine. At JGA, we'd like to think our passion shines through to our recruitment results as well. With a 97% retention rate and an average 19-day job brief to hire success rate, we work fast, we work strategically, and we work with purpose to connect you to the hidden payroll talent that job ads and direct search methods will simply never reach. So if you're hiring or indeed planning to hire, why not partner with the experts that are shaping the future of payroll? Partner with jgarecruitment.com today, or better yet, drop me a message directly, and together we can make sure your next payroll hire is your best one yet. I mean, you raised something quite interesting there, and I don't know if if many of the payroll industry have had a chance to sit back and reflect. Now, AI and automation have been there, as you mentioned earlier, for some time. That 10 days a month saving is significant. And yet when you speak to payroll professionals, they're working harder than ever before. There's still a lot of burnout. There's still a lot of work to be done. So it's not like they're taking those 10 days and spending it on the beach, sipping cocktails while everything else goes on. I think this is where, from my perspective, without even knowing it, we've started to see the shift from just compliance and accuracy and on-time payments into that era or mode of employee experience. And the reason that started to come into the payroll conversation is multitude, but one of those is there is more time now for payroll people to, hopefully, with the introduction of AI, to be more strategic, to lift their heads up and go, how else can we add a value proposition through our function to the employees that we serve? Can we be more creative in the kind of way that we pay our staff, in the dashboarding of those pay slips? And you mentioned postal. That immediately brought back memories of me with the perforated pay slip with the whole fax machine hole punches on the side. But the reality is more and more responsibility is being heaped on the payroll professional now, because AI and automation is helping them with that manual task, saving them that time. And I hope that's really helping to raise the profile of the profession. But of course, it means that payroll people are also demanding more from their solution. So they need a solution that can give them more exposure to having an impact on the employee experience, whether that's through intuitive payroll dashboarding, payslip dashboarding, whether it's through on-demand pay and things like that. What are some of the things that you're seeing that you feel like the customers, and I guess the employees in this instance, are looking for now from their payroll solution that as a platform provider, you've needed to start responding to and maybe start developing and start offering to those employees?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. It's paradoxical that the more that we automate the existing processes for payroll people, and that we enable them to manage by exception rather than by the rule, the more that they then start to want variations that make life complicated for ourselves again. Because you're quite right, time is released, and they get the ability to go, okay, so I can now contemplate, and I have time and energy to consider whether we should be looking at pay on demand, for example. And so we are starting to get, and they are often in the details. With payroll, the devil is in the detail. So they say, are you able to service people in this country? We have employees who intend to be sort of itinerant. They're intending to move around. How should we pay them? For example, we've used pay on demand to effectively eliminate the payroll cycle, because people can take the pay whenever they want, and then what used to be called paydays, now we don't call it that, but effectively it's reconciliation day. People are taking their pay as they want. Pay on demand is probably the best example of this. There's also, with the advent of the technology, there's a couple of other things happening when we talk to payroll professionals. The first thing is that payroll people are now needing to become more conversant in the technology. We don't expect them to become technologists, just like I don't want my marketing team to become technologists, but they do need to be conversant with what are the possibilities that AI and the other two A's can give to me. How can I use it better? So they need to be more conversant with that. And it also means that they can make a better contribution to the organization around them. But this need to understand the technology is, I think, my sense is relatively new for this profession, and most people are grasping it, should we say. I mean, it's worth saying that obviously we spend a lot of time talking to our customers at customer advisory boards and various other mechanisms we have. And because we're effectively, our customers are outsourcing their global payroll to us, and the expectation is that we are investing in the technology so that they don't have to. Sure. And that we are educating them on what the art of the possible is with these technologies as well. So it's sort of changing the relationship a little bit. We're not just processing payroll for people. We're becoming expert in how and when, whether and when the technology can be deployed. So it's evolving quickly.
You raise a really good point there. And one of the questions I get from pretty much every payroll professional I've spoken to be fair, is, Nick, how can I get a better understanding of AI? Where do I start? And my own journey started. I put myself through a Python certification course. Absolutely not needed, by the way. Please don't go and do that. But I had the same question that my payroll professionals have is, from a recruitment perspective, I need to make sure I'm ahead of the curve. So how do I do that? What do I do? There's a lot of Python development on AI. Let's go and do that. But the reality is the platforms that we use internally for recruitment services, that people use for payroll services, actually, a lot of the AI is built in. It's being able to use those systems and their AI effectively that we need to learn. Now, having a basic understanding of AI, language learning models and beyond is certainly helpful. It's not going to be a disadvantage to you in any way. But it's true. We kind of buy these platforms in, whether it's CloudPay, whether it's somebody else, because you've already done that investment. You've got the experts building it for us. We just need to be familiar with how to get the best out of it. And you've alluded a couple of times to the 3As. I want to take us back there because this is something that really does form the backbone of the model at CloudPay, which is automation, APIs, and AI. So I want to break those down a little bit. Let's start with automation. Now, probably read something you put out there, Nick. It's a marketing bit that I read, but I understand that CloudPay have implemented 22 or 23 new automations recently. So what kind of is it probably bigger now since I read that article? Maybe
22 is right. It's automation. It's funny, isn't it? But automation almost sounds old-fashioned now with the advent of APIs and AI. But it is the absolute backbone of the way that our system operates. I always think that like auto, I think is a Greek word meaning self. Like it should do it itself. And if you think of where automation originally became prominent was probably in car manufacturing, wasn't it? Where originally cars were all hand-built and then gradually, bit by bit, the Henry Fords of the world built, sort of rethought how these processes should operate. And that's the critical thing, rethinking about it, so that so much of it can be automated. And again, the benefits of it is that you manage the exceptions rather than managing everything. So ideally, most of the cars should go through. And if there's a glitch or a fault on one of them, then that's the one you focus on rather than the 99 that went through without exception. So we're really focused on it. And it's if you think about automation and the characteristics of payroll, like they're so applicable to payroll. You've got predictable inputs and outputs to a degree, at least in terms of the size and shape of it, maybe not the actual content, high volumes of activity, repetitive processes which should lend themselves to clear rules, and consistency and precision applied. And all applied, if you think of a car production line, that's what a car production line and payroll have in common. And I think that's why automations are so important. As you say, we've implemented 22, which means effectively you can, at the global level, you can press a button and payrolls can and do go all the way through. Not every customer wants that. And in particular, what we're finding, and this is true of APIs and AI as well, is that whilst our customers and no doubt other payroll practitioners are pleased to have these tools at their disposal, they also want to see what's going on. So we can't have it as a black box. I can't put stuff in at one end and have a payslip come out and a payment file come out the other end. I need to see what's going on in between because otherwise, I don't know what's going on. So dashboarding is an important, tangible thing for us to provide to customers so they can see that the system's working.
You mentioned Henry Ford. I think it was Henry Ford who said, whether you believe you can or you believe you can't, you're right. And I think there's a similar kind of element here with AI. Yeah. You can choose to love it, you can choose to hate it. Either way, you're going to be right depending on how you approach it. But I would stay in the love camp because it's coming and change is one of the constants we see in payroll. And I think you alluded there a little bit as to how we keep the human in the loop. And I think that's where some of the concerns, exist with payroll professionals is all this automation sounds so great. And as you said, the capability does exist actually to run a payroll and submit that pay slip without any human in the loop. But there's a reason why we don't want that to happen. So tell us a little bit more about how at CloudPay you see the human element, why humans are so important. They stay within that loop to understand the complexity, to understand the nuance, to check the data. Tell us a little bit more.
Yeah, so we use automations for all the way through our system, but basically it comes down to sort of three things. It's data importing and locking, validations, all the way through, and then generating and publishing the key outputs, so bank files and payslips and GL files and so on. So those are the area that it's used in. But what we don't want is to create a machine that doesn't provide its users with the visibility that it needs. So we have to provide this window into what's going on. If we go back to our automated factory for Henry Ford, who also said, by the way, that you can have any car you want so long as it's black, which is because he was standardizing as much as he could, which doesn't apply in this case, because obviously everybody's payslip and payment file is different. But you can stand. They used to have balconies, I think, in these factories where the supervisor could see the whole production line, and that if something wasn't going right, or if one of the guys that was supervising it, or one of the machines, or anything else wasn't working as well, then they could see that and instantly intervene. And I think that's the analogy that we would use: is that the machine will, or particularly around automations, will continue to. They're set up to repeatedly do the same things, and if the same things, for some reason, we don't want them repeatedly doing the wrong things. And so we need to provide people with visibility and reassurance, I think it's about reassurance as well.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. So let's move on then to the second part, which of course is APIs. And I know that you've got a good case study here. I think you've worked with Visa on a Workday certified integration, and it really transformed the European payroll for Visa. So tell us a little bit more about the API element of the 3As. And if you're able to expand on that case study with Visa, that'd be great. Because I think that really does bring this API thought process into view.
Yeah, so I think that APIs, again, one of the 3As, absolutely central to our vision for what payroll really should be like. I think that I like to have analogies. I've talked about sort of manufacturing cars for automation. For me, APIs are more like, back a few years ago, containerization took place in the shipping industry. And it meant that if you were packing up a lot of stuff and wanted to send it overseas, you didn't have to wrap up a chair and then you wrap up a laptop and then you have to wrap up something else. You could basically chuck it all in the container, and then the whole system to take it from your house to somebody else's house in Australia via train, ship, boat, plane, whatever it might be, was all set up for that standard size of container and was far, far more efficient. And that's how we see APIs. And in particular, if you think of payroll systems, there's typically, like, you probably know better than me, Nick, but there's 10 or 15 types of inputs and outputs to a payroll system. And all of these from maybe 6 or 10 different systems. So we think of the payroll process, the payroll platform, as being right in the middle of this hub and spoke of data coming in and going out. And our vision, frankly, is to integrate everything. Everything should have this API-led integration where the data is live, it's two-way, it's reportable, it's secure, and it's safe. And so that's our vision. And where we have started, of course, is that probably 60, maybe 70% of the data that goes in and out of a payroll system is from the HCM system, where until relatively recently, and even now, of course, many payroll practitioners using spreadsheets or XML-based integrations in order to make that happen. And quite quickly, that's changing now, which is, of course, good. And so we anticipate that some way down the path, over the next few years, us and the payroll industry will just be completely, the API logic will apply everywhere, as it does today in most of banking and finance, for example. You wouldn't expect to see APIs there. So probably we have done a piece of work with Visa, but we've also done one more recently, actually, with Avis Budget, who obviously everybody hopefully would know. They're a sort of car rental company operating in 180 countries around the world. They came to us and they said, look, the payroll data is just, it's a challenge we all understand. Different formats, different templates. The reporting was manual. Some of the reports that they needed, very, very simple reports, were taking like 3 months to generate. And so what they wanted to do was to set up a real-time integration with Workday, which is the HCM that they were using. Seamless data transfer in and out of our system. Automated validations, catching issues early, reducing error rate, all the stuff that we talked about. And so they are perhaps a really good example. We reckon, we work with them, you were asking earlier about metrics. Once we have done this integration using APIs between their HCM, Workday, and our system, we reckon there were like 60% time savings in payroll and HR because of the nature of the manual work that they've been doing and the fact that they were making a lot of mistakes previously as well. We think we halved the amount of errors that they were making. Again, as you know, it's difficult to measure these things, but we did go out of our way to try and articulate what impacts it was making. So that's, for us, a real live example of where a proper real-time integration both ways can make a real difference to our customers.
And interestingly, from the error perspective, and I think this, correct me if I'm wrong, I think this is on the ADP Future of Payroll report, but they did some statistics on how errors impact recruitment. And I think with one error from a pay slip in an annual cycle, it makes the employee 24% more likely to look for a new position. But if you get the same employee gets 2 errors in the same calendar year, that jumps to 49%. So again, for me, this is a great example of the value that platforms can add and payroll professionals can add to the employee experience, but also how they can become profit, rather than just a cost center, they can be impact driving based departments. Because if we're able to improve that employee retention and prevent attrition through having more accurate pay slips, and actually the cost of recruitment, as we know, can be expensive, not just in terms of the recruitment fees, which is actually a small element. It's that experience leaving the door. And if we get that right, brilliant. If you get it wrong, you don't want your top performers leaving because of errors in your payroll process, because of the manual element of it, or because we're not really streamlined for the future. So I think there's additional considerations here of how a lack of accuracy or those errors can really impact further down the chain. And I think,
I think that as we know, our own expectations and of employees continue to grow and grow, as they should do, in terms of the quality of the experience that they have. I think that we walk into a room now, we press the light switch, we expect it to come on. And the fact that there's a huge amount of complexity all the way back to the power station or maybe the source of fuel, but I unthinkingly press the light switch and expect it to come on. And this is the paradox of payroll and why it's such an intriguing industry to work in, is that you've got this, if you like, this commodity product, where with payroll you expect to look at your bank account and see that the money has come in on the right, and it's the right amount and so on, which is the analogy with the turning the light switch on. But then there's also this amazing opportunity that payroll has to provide additional value, both to the business into supporting them as like a business enabler in terms of what the business trying to accomplish, but also the employee experience, where it can be enhanced, whether it's using apps or pay on demand or no doubt a whole host of other things. And I think that we talk about an integration between one system and another, as we just did, of Workday to CloudPay, but the impact of that is so far-reaching, and that's we sometimes miss the impact of it.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I would argue, despite all the fear-mongering out there on the headlines, there's probably no better time to be in payroll. I mean, you're probably experiencing that from a marketing perspective. It's a great thing to be talking about. There's so much innovation now in the world of payroll. Payroll people have more time to innovate. Platform providers are keen to innovate. We're keen to, as you say, improve organizational objectives and improve the employee experience at the same time. So I think it's a hugely exciting time as well. We need to be shouting from the rooftops to really bring it into the fore. One thing I wanted to mention, you mentioned just then the idea of that turning the light on. I want to just jump back to that for a moment, that instant nature. Because I think the other thing we're seeing now from employees or just people generally is we're used to that instant feel of things. And, whether it's, I want a movie, it's instant, we stream it. I want a taxi, I can go straight onto an app and have it instantly, right? Everything is instant and very quick. And you talked earlier about the emergence of on-demand pay and the dissolution of the pay cycle. Now, I don't know if this is correct. From a global standpoint, though, the feedback I've had is pay on demand is very much of interest and evolving quickly and being adapted and integrated quickly in the UK, certainly in the US, but not necessarily so readily in certain Europe, particularly across Europe, Scandinavian places like that. So, as a global provider and from your marketing lens, are you seeing adoption worldwide? Is it just in certain locations, or do you feel that actually over time this will be adopted everywhere, even if it isn't right now? So
I definitely think that over time it'll become the norm. Okay. No question in my mind of that. I can remember my daughter was she was working at she's in her late teens and working at a restaurant. Very, very quick story. And I saw that she was sitting at the kitchen table and she was going through what looked like an app for pay on demand. So I sort of put my head over her shoulder and said, can you do me a favor? Can you record this for me and send it to me? Because I'm very interested to see how you're using it and what the interface is like and so on. And she said, well, sure I can, Dad, but why don't you just use yours? Now, as it happens, I do have pay on demand, but her expectation of that generation is that everybody will get it.
Yeah, it's
because all of her friends who said, "Oh yeah, I saved my salary till the end of the month, and then it's nice because I get a big lump into my bank account." But one of the people that I know, he transfers, because they get their shift information on, he more or less transfers it as soon as he's not on the way home from the shift he's just worked.
Yeah, I can believe it. That's a generation we're in, right? Everyone wants it instantly.
Yeah, there's generational change. I also think, to be honest, that it also lends itself to particular industries. You might broadly call them blue collar, like people are working in retail, or if they're working in restaurants and so on. That there may be more of a need, because they're working uneven shifts, or they're working part time. They may go, well, I want to go to Reading Festival, and I need the money now, otherwise I won't get the ticket, type thing. Yeah. So I think it'll be at different rates of growth by industry.
Okay, Nick, so we've talked today a lot about the three A's, the automation, APIs, and AI. But I want to bring it back to something I talked about in my introduction, which was high-performance payroll. And for me, I think high-performance payroll has to bring back the people element. And I know that, even with world-class tech, payroll still comes down to trust, compliance, and care. So what role, or where do people still play a critical role, should I say, at CloudPay? And have you managed to blend that talent with tech to achieve what I would call, and maybe what you call as well, high performance payroll?
Yeah, we're definitely of the view that the real magic happens, as it were, when you get this combination of the tech that we've already talked about, plus the expertise of people using their human expertise to make sure that the right decisions are made, to address issues that customers have, and to be proactive in thinking about new ways that we can do things. I think that this complementary nature of people and technology. I was reading a report that was done. It was about using AI for detecting breast cancer. And when this experiment was done, I think it was about 5 or 6 years ago, using human radiologists. So this is from scans. They performed pretty well. In 83% of the times, they captured that there was a cancer going on. So accurate 83% of the times. That's without any help. The AI algorithm found it 92% of the times, but there were loads of false positives, which obviously causes quite unnecessary distress and work and so on. So it's an inefficient way of doing it. But when they combined the two, it came to 86% with hardly any false positives. And that's definitely how we see it working, the combination of people and technology. And when we talk to our customers, prospects, and so on, and we go out to talk to people, what they do want and expect is to have humans talking to them, whether that be in the form of a monthly update or an annual update or a quarterly update, a business review, whatever it is that they do. They are looking to interact with people as well. And I guess otherwise you become sort of a piece of software, and I think the payroll practitioners are looking to outsource, particularly globally, and there are more and more of them. That's a market that's growing quickly. Then they want people there as well. They want access to expertise so that they don't have to have it in-house unless they, for obvious reasons.
Interesting. We're seeing the same in the recruitment landscape. I mean, I know we don't talk about it often, and maybe it's a landscape that payroll professionals won't see very often, but hopefully this gives a little bit of context. The AI systems exist already to be able to sift through CVs, create shortlists, and even make the business development outreach to find clients. But it's the nuance. It's the ability and experience for me to look at those CVs and understand the sector relevance, the key things that make somebody different or more relevant or more suitable from a cultural perspective. And I think the same thing happens in payroll. I host a show called Payroll Question Time. We've got a panel of payroll experts, from technology partners as well, where you suddenly realize that actually one question can often have 6 different interpretations and 6 different kind of responses. And it's that human element that helps build that trust, build that confidence, give the employees the care they need to feel secure in their pay slips, secure in their earnings and things like that. And there's been some fantastic surveys that really link financial wellness with mental health and how payroll plays a role in that equation. And I think that's where we need to really hone in on, really, because it plays such an important role in people's lives. And I think finally we're starting to get that voice out. And I think you've highlighted it there really well as well. So I guess just to finish before we open the payroll vault, I want to jump back into that high performance element again. What does high performance payroll mean to you in real terms?
So when we talk about high performance payroll, we think of it as being, and actually it lends itself really well to what we've been talking about this last hour or so. There's three components to what we believe is high performance payroll. The first one is access to the technologies that are going to enable all the things that people expect from payroll. So investing in technology, providing our customers with access to the technology so they don't have to invest in it for themselves is an absolute cornerstone of what we provide, and without which it's not possible to have high performance payroll. So that's the first dimension. The second one is, again, what we've talked about, is operational service excellence. And service excellence and operational excellence has two parts. One is getting stuff right, where payroll is payroll. So, we all know that getting stuff right all of the time, every time, it is a bit of a challenge. So we also need to have people who are going to identify those challenges, address them, fix them, and make sure they don't happen again. There's also providing advice and guidance and expertise, probably, to our customers. And then the third one, which is important to us because maybe unique, well, not unique to us, but certainly important to us, because we're a global payroll provider, is being able to replicate that expertise or have access to that expertise globally, on compliance and so on. So those, for us, are the three components. And we know this is true because our prospects are voting with their feet, and I think that we're have grown. I'm going to show off a little bit now, but we've grown at 30% for the last 2, 3, 4, 5 years, which is way, way, way ahead of the market growth. So we feel like we've got that combination right.
Brilliant. Well done. It was hard for me to argue against it when our own values at JJ are communication, collaboration, and care. I think you put those three words against those three high performance metrics. So it's been a really fascinating conversation, and we've really have had a bit of a whistle stop tour across those three A's, that automation, APIs, and AI. So I thank you ever so much for joining me on today's show. We are, of course, going to open the payroll vault here, Nick. So a little bit of a bonus round, 3 short, sharp questions for you. The first one is this. What's one piece of advice you'd give to global payroll leaders who are trying to navigate a global transformation today?
The one piece of advice for global transformation, it's like, think digital. For me, the transformation means a digital transformation. And we know that there are so many payroll practitioners out there who don't have the digital, they don't have the tech that they need in order to get the outputs they need. So digital first, I think, would be my advice.
Perfect. Love that. Question number 2. What kind of legacy do you hope from a marketing perspective that CloudPay leaves on the future of global payroll?
Well, I would like to think that we did a video last year that you might have seen, which described, once all the roadmaps are played out and everybody's delivered on these 3 A's, what would the world look like? And it looked like, I think, a much sunnier and a nicer place for payroll practitioners and for customers alike. And I think that if CloudPay could have made that impact by leading the way with the application of these technologies and expertise, then we'd be pretty happy with that.
Perfect. I love the vision. And last but no means least, I'm going to ask all of my guests, which is this. If payroll was a book, a movie, or a song, what would it be? Completely your choice, and why?
Oh, gosh. I can't think of anything off the top of my head, but it has to be a song with maybe I Will Always Love You by Whitney Houston.
Oh, there you go. You did think of something. I'll do that.
I've only been in the industry 3 years, and I spent much of my time in other industries. But I do love the payroll industry. It's unique and it's special.
Now that's a nice way to round off the show. Championing payroll, raising the profile, and also giving people some really interesting insights into how the future looks and why it's important we do embrace the digital journey, right? Because the future it's intelligent, it's connected, it's innovating. And most importantly, which I really love the way you finished the show today in that last question, is you made it really clear that it's also still very much human. I hope that gives the people that listen to this show, that watch this show on YouTube, wherever it is you get the content, some reassurance that the future's bright. It's exciting and we need to embrace it. And we've got a really exciting times and exciting future ahead for the employees that we pay, but also for the organizations that we support. And let's hope they start to see that value really come to the fore. For anyone, of course, who wants to learn more about CloudPay, or if you want to explore the 3 A's for yourselves, then please do head over to cloudpay.com. There will be a link directly in the show notes. So if you don't remember that URL, don't worry. Click to the show notes of this episode on your favorite platform, on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you get your content. The link will be in the show notes. So you can go straight through. I will just say on that website, it's more than just a solution. You've got a number of resources, blogs, stats. There's a whole wealth of information that you can really get to grips with. Even if you're not looking to change solution, I recommend you go and have a look at that platform and just use it for all the great content that Nick and his team provide. So do take a look at that. That's cloudpay.com. Of course, if you enjoyed this episode, please all do remember to follow the show. Please do review it. That really helps us reach a wider audience. And most importantly, if you can, as I mentioned in the introduction, share this episode, share the URL, share wherever you get the content with your favorite payroll colleagues, because that will really help us raise the profile of payroll globally. Thank you for joining me today, Nick, on the Payroll Podcast. It's been a pleasure. I look forward to bringing you the next episode real soon. I've been your host. My name is Nick Day, and thank you again for joining us today. Thank you, Nick.
Thank you, Nick.